Everybody
Well,
be good, right?
yeah, everybody smile, because I'm going to pan the audience. I'm going to tip the computer over. Well, first of all, when I was approached about this, I said, yeah. I hem-hawed around, and then I said yes, and um, you know, you kind of wonder, you at 74, it's like, who's going to be interested in what's going on, these days. Good to see some of my old classmates, my young classmates, and church members. So thank you for coming and supporting. When Shannon asked, one of the things I said was, I'm a Christian, I'm a pastor. And I said, because a lot of times they don't want anybody to talk about God too much in certain settings like this, public. And she said, I've been to your church. And I had to look and look. Oh, yeah, you came with Amanda. Yeah. So I feel at liberty that hopefully I won't offend anybody, but I'll just open up in prayer. Because that's part of who Phillip Jackson is now, the one that survived. So, Father God, I thank you for just a blessed opportunity to do this, and may we have fun and just enjoy each other in Jesus' name. Amen. And the second thing, she told me, she said, we're going to slot 1 to 3. Oh, let me see. Wait a minute. I got to see how far I can go. I got to test things out here. Okay, I'm not going that way. All right. She said, we're going to slot 1 to 3. And I thought, that's way too much time. But, we'll just talk about what we talk about and do any questions that we might want to do or thoughts. And then we'll just take it from there. So I kind of figured it, like about 45 minutes would really be good, but 30 to 45. But we'll roll with what they have here. So first thing is I want to introduce my wife, Deborah, who we're approaching 20 years. She's put up with me, and I appreciate her. She's a good wife, a good woman, a good partner, a good friend. And again, it's nice to see classmates, and it's nice to see members of our church. Thank you for coming in and being supportive in this. You cannot use any of this information to blackmail me back at church. All right. And I'll just address that real quick, and I'm going to go into the reason that I'm here. We do pastor a church in Cozy Corners, up towards Darylin. It's a small fellowship. We run between 30 and 40 members. I call it a small fellowship in comparison to a lot of the larger churches in other areas, But when we look at we're in the woods. This is my lovely wife, and I must say, some of you knew my mother, and who was Edna Jackson, and she was kind of a pillar of one of the communities, She lived to be 102. And I'm not even thinking about it. Meaning I'm not thinking about living to be 102. That's what I mean. I'm happy I made it to 74. I'm hoping I make it to 75. Whenever God calls me home is just fine with me. So, all right. Right now I'm 74 years young. We'll take this time just to enjoy each other, and I want to tell you about my life. One of the things that I'm not going to do is I'm not going to sugarcoat what I went through. I will not be so graphic at times, but I'm not going to. I was telling myself, well, you know what? You don't say this, don't say that, don't say this, don't say that. I'm going to keep it PG-13. Okay, so that's I see we have little elephants, and I don't even want to put things in their head, but I want to really explain something. When Shannon asked me to come and tell what it was like for me to be raised in this community. Now, the community is not evil. Many of you, we went to school together. We weren't evil. We weren't. But there were some things that happened that were totally inappropriate, and things that happened specifically due to the fact that I was black. And so, you know what? It's okay. That's one is history. One, I had to deal with it. My little sister asked me to come and speak about it, and so I'm going to do just that. But like I said, we're going to keep it PG-13. Okay? So, like I said, I didn't just want to sugarcoat things. Because you know what? There's people. Now listen, this is how we're going to start one of these things. People say, I don't see your color. Well, you're about the only one that doesn't. You know, I mean, I see it every time I go by the mirror. I see it right now. I see a black guy with a shiny bald spot. I see my color all the time. And, you know, when people are trying to be nice, they say, oh, I don't even see your color. And I'm thinking, I love you too. You know, but, you know, that's the reality as we do. But I know people want to make people feel good. So, I do need to correct one thing, and that is that I wasn't born in Burnett County. I was born and I was going to get a hold of you, and I thought, you don't need to change your paperwork. I was born in Waukegan, Illinois, which is Zion, Illinois. And so, hey, pumpkin, come here. Ooh, you're cold. So I was born in Waukegan, Zion, Illinois. January 7th, 1952. My first memory, though, is being up here. I was brought up here as as an infant, so don't know, you know, my life, my 6 months in being in Chicago. So this is where I was raised. I got to tell you, my mom and dad, they had 60 acres up in Cozy Corners for a long time. I remember that's my first memory. And I want to tell you my first memory. They had a farmhouse up there, and when you walked in, I got to test myself. Okay. When you walked in the farmhouse, like from that door, there was a corner like this. There was cabinets there, you know, like little counters about the width of the table there. And then there was a sink. It had a pump in it. And then boom, boom, there was a stairway up. So one of my very first memories is walking in the house, saying hello or something to Mom, and getting ready. She said, go upstairs and take a nap, or I had to go upstairs, and there was a snake over there on the steps, you know? And then there was also a door there that led to a room where there was sawdust and ice. For some of us who know what that was about. That was our refrigerator, for you younger folks. So I remember looking at that, and I remember Mom saying, boy, get upstairs. And I'm like, it's a snake. It's a live, living snake. She said, that snake ain't going to hurt you. And of course it didn't. Because all I'd seen was this little black kid. You know, that snake probably couldn't even catch me if it was even interested. I went up those steps so fast. But that was one of my first memories. And my dad's name was William Edward Jackson, Sr. Of course, Mom was Edna Jackson, or Edna Louise Jackson, and then she remarried when Daddy died. You know, so like I said, you might have known my mom. I was the youngest of 5 people. Now, this is where it gets interesting. This is where the community didn't know this, and actually I didn't know it for a while. I was the youngest of 5, but however, I was not the youngest of 5. When I came from Illinois, it was because I was adopted. Now, I didn't know I was adopted until I was about 7-ish, 8 years old. But I was adopted, so that didn't affect the communities, but it affected the household. In the household, I wasn't the youngest, although I was the youngest. That makes sense? In the household, there was 5 children: Alfred, Barbara, Louise, William, and me. Alfred stayed up here for about 1 school semester or so. He couldn't handle it. He went back to Illinois to live with his dad. Okay, because Alfred was from my mom's first marriage. Alfred left. So there was Barbara, Louise, William, and myself. And so now how that affects us is in the family dynamics, William was the oldest and William was the youngest. William got the good food and William was the baby of the family. He got the good food. William got a new bike. Philip got the hand-downs. But that was okay. I didn't really know much better until I got older anyway. So I was happy to have that little girl's bike that I got from my sister. It rode the same, But anyways, so there were some dynamics, family dynamics that, of course, they stayed in the family. And being adopted didn't affect the outside people. Matter of fact, I talked with some people, and they said, I never knew you were adopted. No, you didn't know that. We didn't put in a sign on me saying, this one is adopted. This one belongs, but he's not the baby. William actually caught a lot of slack for being the baby of the family when he wasn't supposed to be the baby of the family. But he only caught that slack from me, which really didn't amount to much, But my sisters didn't like always having to wait for him to get to family gatherings because he was mom's pet. But I have to get all this out of me so that I can go forward with a nice, even kill. No, so just bear with me, all right? No, that's okay. He was the pet. And that don't mean he didn't work hard and didn't do things like he was supposed to. All right, so let me see. I'm following my notes here. Oh yeah, I found out by accident that I was adopted. And the only reason I'm mentioning this is because you can. I want to end up painting a picture of how I brought attitude into my life and how other people, when they would talk and try to deal with me, they had to deal with this attitude because I got some of who I was from other people, and it curbed who I became for a period of time. So, the reason I mentioned that is like, okay, William got all the good stuff and I didn't, but on the outside, nobody knew what time it was, as far as I'm concerned. So to make that long story short, I'll go back to my notes. Long story short, the family knew, and that was, I found out, I'll tell you how I found out I was adopted. We went to Illinois to a family reunion, and I came from a family of 14. There was 14 of us. Helen was the oldest. Tony, he's still alive. Helen and Tony are still alive. Then there was Larry. He passed about 4 years ago. Then there was Donald. He's alive and thriving and doing well. And then there was me. And then there was a list of others. 2 sets of twins, 5 little brothers, number of sisters, 14 to 15 of us. And so I had my little brother who was living in, where they're living in kind of like the ghettos. And, anybody know what Carol syrup is? Old school Carol syrup? Yeah. It used to come in a can. Yeah. And you pry the lid off. Well, my little brother Gary, he picked up the Carol syrup. It was just me and him in this room. And he picked up the Carol syrup and he was playing and he dropped it out of his hands. And it's like a coffee can. And it, boom, hit the floor, started falling out. And he's picking it. He picked up the lid, he's talking to me and he says, you my brother. Now, he's my little brother. So I'm probably 8, maybe 8. So that meant he was like 5 to 7, somewhere, 5 to 6, because there was another brother above him, Albert. But you are my brother. I said, I'm not your brother. You're my cousin. He said, no, you're my brother. I heard them talking the other night, and they said, you're my brother. And as he's talking to me, he takes this bread, right? This is the classic. I'll never forget this. He takes this bread, and he swipes up that syrup,
You are my brother.
No, I'm being raised by mom and dad. You know, and we do not do stuff like that. You know, I mean, slurp, 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 and just start eating that, and just kept on talking like it was no big deal. I'm like, no, I'm not your brother. But I found out when we got back to Wisconsin, I seen the family huddling and talking, and then they called me in the room, and then they told me that I was not really a Jackson, that I was a Quinn. And, you know, that kind of thing developed. We talked it through. At the age of, like I said, I was around 7 or 8. I ended up storming out of the house, feeling like I didn't belong to anybody. And, you know, maybe they could have done it different. Who knows? You know, but it's all good. I lived through it. Barely. But I lived through it. I think maybe some of the reasons they never mentioned it to people on the outside is it had been something else. I never mentioned it once I found out. It was something else for people to use or to attack. You know, we're pretty good at attacking people, attacking children, putting responsibility on them that they shouldn't have. And if people probably in the community known that I was adopted, that would have been one other thing that they could have brought to the table and used on me or against me. My mom told me that when I was about 25, because of course, you know, I went on the quest like a lot of young people. I wanted to know who my father was. And my mom at one point, she said, I knew your father. She said, but he's dead now. So I momentarily, for a moment, got high on life. I want to meet my dad, and 8 seconds later, said, yeah, he's dead. I'm like, huh? And then I thought to myself, why'd you even tell me? But of course, that's what I thought. That's not what I was going to say to my mother. If you knew my mama, you see my face? I've had reconstructive surgery. No, but I did make the mistake a couple of times of swearing in front of her. And mom was left-handed. And as my face was on the comeback, then my eyes caught up with me, and I was looking at her like, Mom, you just slapped the... You know, I'm 11 to 12 years old at that time, but I thought I could talk a certain way. I found out that I shouldn't. And I never did again. Unless I was at that point where I could outrun her. So you asked me, what was it like to be raised around here? I'm going to go right into this, and I'm really not going to keep us a long time, but I went to my first school was Pansy School. Now, I don't know if you guys remember that, Gene? Yeah, Patty, you do? Yeah. Pansy School. It was a one-room schoolhouse. It was about 4 miles, out of Danbury. Actually, that was kind of like some good years for me. Everybody was in one room, 1 to 8 grades in one room, and we even had like an outhouse. Us guys had 2-seaters. I don't know if the gals had 2-seaters, but us boys had 2 seats in our outhouse. We thought it was kind of cool, you know. But in Danbury is where I learned. In Pansy, I learned to fold a flag. Now, we only went to that school from 1 to 4 grades. That was me. In my 5th grade, I went to Danbury. So when I was 6 to 7 years old, somewhere in there, I learned how to fold the flag of the United States of America. Now, you compare that to nowadays, brother. At 6 to 7 years old, I knew the Pledge of Allegiance. Because every morning in our one-room schoolhouse, all 8 grades stood up and pledged allegiance to the flag. We stood up and we prayed. The reason I learned how to fold and raise a flag was there'd be an older student would take a younger student and we would go out, we'd raise the flag, and then at the end of the day, we'd go out and take the flag down and fold the flag. So that's how I learned. I had a mentor teaching me about basic principles, ones that we're fighting for right now to get put back into our classrooms. Now, the uncomfortable part of that was that we also sang songs. And back in those days, I mean, you could probably find it these days in the books if they were singing those same old hymnals. But, oh, Swanee River, far, far from home. And so when you get to that uncomfortable part for me and William, because William was there with me, that's where the darkies roam. And all the eyes will always go around the room looking for the darkies. I want to be able to be at ease with this. Listen, I don't want to have to not say things to you, and I want you to be able to understand we're all adults, but this is what happened. And I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable. I'm not uncomfortable. I've been through this, and so don't just absorb. Don't feel bad or don't feel guilty for what someone did. All right? So, but that's what we used to say. So every time when we got ready to sing a couple of the certain songs, I'd already know the songs, and I'd be, oh no. I'd much rather sing about Ruby Deer and her rotten tooth, and so the Pison killed them both. So you say, I remember that song too. Debbie's shaking her head. No, that was a song we used to have to sing, and all the time at school. Well, you know what? So my grades 1 through 4 were about the best. I had one fight that I can remember, and that was with a classmate. His name was Danny. And he's gone over to the other side. I think everybody in his family, his sisters, 2 sisters have. His name was Danny Bradshaw. Do you remember Danny Bradshaw? About the 3rd grade, I don't even know what happened. But Danny decided that he was going to punch me out. And that little brother, now you see, you got to remember this one-room schoolhouse. It's a stucco old building. And they had all these lumps of cement coming out of them. And Danny, I can still picture him. He was like, something. And for some reason, he thought I was going to just stay there. It was, boom! Hits the school, breaks his hand, and we laughed about it years later. Not at the immediate time. But Danny, that was the extent of our stuff. The larger kids protected the younger kids. I had a big brother, and it all worked out pretty good for me my first 4 years. Then I went to Danbury. Now, how was it for a young black kid? Well, when I had my big brother, who was 3 years older than me, 2.5 years older, but 3 grades in front of me. When I had him, I didn't have nearly the problems, physically that I would have had being alone. But when I came to Danbury, I was in the 5th grade, 10 years old. I was now, from this moment, the only black student that I would ever see or ever have anything to do with unless I walked and looked at the mirror and seeing my blackness. But that was it. Nobody else. Remember, there's no other black students in Danbury or Webster in my class. So I'm going to share you what it was like to be in some of these situations. But first of all, my first time on a bus, because Mom and Dad used to drive the feeder bus at Hansey School, so I didn't have to ride a bus. We either rode with them when they were driving, or we would walk to get to Larry's. And that's uphill both ways. That's right. We all know what that's like, right? So, long story short, the very first day I got on a school bus, and I still remember some of their faces. The bus driver, who was Art, had to tell, settle down, kids, settle down, because there were people going, oh, oh, oh. I still remember this one girl giggling. It's like, oh, you know, it's like they had never seen a young black kid before. And so, you know, I roamed around and found a seat and sat down and I listened and it was like, okay. But let me tell you something that happened to me in a setting that is one of the uncomfortable times. So I had a 5th grade teacher who did this. She was standing up. I'm in Danbury. It's my first year there. Oh, I wonder if you guys remember this. I didn't think anybody'd be here.
Anderson. This was Anderson.
Well, she was talking about plants and hazelnuts and pine cones. And then she dipped aspens. And then she dipped off into a world that I had not even heard. And she said, oh, and these are... See, these are the little elephants. Use your imagination. Inward. You know, toes.
Yep, right.
That's what they used to call them. Okay? And I'm like, of course, you know what happens? The whole room erupts. Okay? And are they looking at the Native Americans? No. They're looking at me. And they're giggling and they're laughing. And I don't know if she didn't realize what she said or maybe, I don't know. I can't speculate for her. But she immediately stood up and yelled at the class. And then guess what she did? She made me stand up. Come from the back of the class, because that's where I sat, in the back row. And she made me go all the way up there to her. She walked me to the classroom door. She put me out in the hallway. She talked to the class for a minute, which seemed like 15 to me, but I'm going to guess it was just a minute or so. And then she opened the door and had me come back in. Now, I would have done that a little different. I don't know why she made me stand up and leave the room. But when I came back in, of course, you know, what happened when I came back in? Snicker, 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 giggle, 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 giggle. And then there was somebody that I wish I had had the liberty just to beat some of the Native American out of him. And when I'm walking back to my desk, he belts out, Phillip, let us see your toes. And so, you know, what can you do? I couldn't assault him.
Why?
Yeah, you know, I'm in the fifth grade. I'm 10 years old. I left that kind of stuff until I was older. But I went back to my seat. And I still remember where some people, you know, they say that when things like this happen to you, like I still remember where I was when President Kennedy was assassinated. I remember exactly where I was. I remember the people sitting, some of the students where they were sitting. I could tell you who was sitting there and who was sitting there, who was sitting right in front of me. Yeah, let me see your feet. So I went and I sat down. You know, there's things that cut you and you remember them forever. That's why I'm very thankful to know God. And I'm going to touch base with that in a minute. But let me move on. I'm just actually starting to sound like church. So what do you think? You know, 10 years old, what do you think I think of myself at 10 years old? You know, I'm in the fifth grade when this happens, you know. Even that things like, remember the presidential exercises that we used to do when we were kids? They had people would tell me, don't outrun me. What do you mean don't outrun you? Harold, you run like a turtle. What? Don't outrun me. I'll kick you, blah, 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 blah. So I'd outrun him because I know he couldn't catch me anyways. But I mean, this is the kind of thing that, you know, you deal with as you come up. And the reason I tell you some of this is because it can mold you, shape you. You think, well, why don't you do this? Why didn't? No, a 10-year-old kid. How old are you, hon? How old are you?
11.
11?
Or 12, sorry. I'm 10.
You're 10. So I was her age. How old are you?
12.
12. So, okay, so there's the things that are happening between this age and this age, 10 and 12 years old. They can curve what you think of yourself. So I used to get mad because as an adult, when I looked back, I'm thinking, you know what? I allowed these people to create character in me and mold me and cause me not to even like myself. Now, that's not my fault. This is not woes is me, but that's just the reality of how it was. I didn't have some of the privileges that some of us had, but you know, we've all been through that. So you know what, and I know this too. That maybe, hopefully, not too many of you have had situations, but there's people who have a hard life, a lot harder than mine. You know, there's some tough goings out there. So I don't think mine was so bad that I could not, you know, get over it. I got over it, thank God. But I still struggle with certain things. So Danbury is where I also learned this. There's a pecking order. I was so glad to learn that, because I found out that there was a group of people that could possibly be disliked as much as me, if not more than me. You know where I'm going? The reservation. The Native Americans. I would see them. Yeah, I would see the Native American brothers, more of the brothers, catch flack. Well, then what that did for me is that it lightened the load. I'm sorry. But when another man's getting whooped and picked on, that means I'm not. So, but then I also found out that there's a pecking order. And where I expected the whites and the natives and then me, I expected the natives that we would huddle around and we would reinforce even each other. No, that gave them somebody to pick on. So here I was at the bottom of the pecking order. But you know what that did for me? It pointed me in the wrong direction. I had to go find people from whatever class they were in, at whatever moment, if they were weak and they didn't have people around them, I had to go find them so that I could feel better about who I was. You know, your brother stomped me, I'm stomping you. And you know, it was always fun when someone was older and I could stomp them. That I could stomp an upperclassman. Didn't happen too many times. Too many Duncan Worthens and too many Ralph Brittons. Ralph was strong as an ox. I used to wrestle with Ralph. Anyways, he was a good guy. But he was strong. Yeah. So okay, let me move right along here. So I found out about the pecking order. The pecking order wasn't such a great thing, but it did help me. It helped me relieve some of my stress in the wrong directions, you know. And but I want to tell you about a highlight of my life. Now, this is how some of this works. Before I went to Webster, I'm in Danbury. I'm on the basketball team because they're under the illusion that the little black kid can play basketball. And they found out that that really wasn't so. But in any case, I was on the team and I played. Actually, even in those days, I was probably okay. But I remember we're in the basement and in the gym practicing, and the cheerleaders were practicing also. And I heard one of the cheerleaders say to the other cheerleader, because, you know, we had these, let's say it was, and I know what it was, Ike Peterson, he was a good basketball player. And Tim and Steve Worship. These guys, they were tall for one, and they were big, you know. I was all of 5 foot. Who knows what I was back in those days? Probably, you know, like 5 foot. But anyways, I was bringing the ball out down the court, and I heard them leave one guy, and I heard one of the cheerleaders say to the other cheerleader, "Should we do Phillip?" Oh, yeah. So they said those words. Phillip, he's our man. If he can't do it, no one can. I immediately swole up to 6 foot tall. It was one of the best moments of my life. They included me in something. But you know what the thing was that was so interesting? they had to ask each other if they should do it. I mean, it's not bad, and it's not on them. They're kids too. But they didn't know if they could do it. See, all this stuff, when you think about being raised in an area, all that stuff helped produce someone that was not the best person as a young person. So let me quickly take us through. That was Danbury. Some of the things at Danbury. I did like. If anybody, you will know the fairs. Specifically, Cindy and Rebecca. We had swings in Danbury. That if they had them nowadays, the EPA or the TTC or OSHA, they'd be right there cutting chains and cutting with and then the swings we used to have that were probably 10 foot. Yeah, 10 foot. They'd probably be like this because they were swings with chains and a rubber seat on them. And Cindy or Rebecca, I don't know what that was. I'm going to sit down for a second. They liked to get me on that swing. Maybe I was screaming. I don't know. But do you remember the pump? How we used to pump those swings? They would. So I'd be sitting there, and they'd have a foot here and a foot here, and then they would pump this way, and then of course you have to keep your legs up or you'll hit the ground. So you automatically pumped back, and so that means they would pump this way, and I'd pump like this, and then we would take that swing against my will. That thing, we'd take it almost as high as the swing. We'd really pump those things. And they would pump me up on that swing and laugh and giggle the whole time, until they got low enough where I could either jump off or they just got tired. It was like, wow, But that was just fun stuff. I left Danbury. I went to Webster. 7th and 8th grade, if I remember right. Those were the worst years ever. We had a monster man. I ran into the meanest, ugliest teacher I ever seen. I mean, Mrs. Olson, my first 4 years, she was like an angel. She watched over the whole school, all 8 grades. She made things, and even in Danbury, I had 3 different teachers. But they were good teachers. They, other than the one beating me up occasionally, verbally, But when we got to Webster, junior high, I have to say that I don't know if it was just a black thing. It wasn't just a black thing. It was, this man was mean. Yeah, I see Jeannie and Patty shaking their heads. They know who. I won't mention his name because of who. I don't know if he's still alive. I don't know lawsuits, but oh, he's gone. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh no, don't take that back to the church. No. But he was the meanest teacher that you would not believe. He used to beat us. He used to take. I'm trying to find a book. He used to take a dictionary, Webster Dictionary, and so it's this thick, it's this big, wide, and it's this long. And if you did not have your lessons done, how many did you not get done? 4. I couldn't get these 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And don't think I'm exaggerating. Am I? No. And your head would bounce around, and he just, and I won't mention her name. She was an A student. She sat next to me. I tell you what, I was like that. You remember that one cowboy bad guy? He had an eye that could go this way, and he had an eye that could go that way. You'd see him on Paladin or Rawhide or some of those shows. That was me back in those days, because I knew for every time I didn't have an answer, I was going to get smacked. So I would be looking like this and looking over at this page. Whoops! Over at this page. This young lady's paper trying to get answers because every answer that I could get from anywhere meant that I didn't get hit. And you know what's funny? He didn't care if you were sincerely trying to do the work. You just didn't have the answer. And I seen him even hit this young lady, a student. She goes, Mr. Rich, I remember he stood above her. I just said his name, didn't I?
Yeah.
Sorry. Cat's out of the bag. But anyways, he stood over her, blah, 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 blah. And I remember those words. This really hurts me to do this. And he wheeled up, bam, and hit her. But you see, the reason I mention him, it wasn't just a black thing. He beat everybody. I don't know why us kids didn't get together and just hand him something. But he beat the Native Americans, he beat me, and he beat occasionally anybody of the Caucasian kids that did not have the thing done. He was terrible, but that was part of what we seen as discipline and things like that. He curbed some of our way of thinking. You know, you go into the world and you think, hey, this is crazy. I need to be the one dishing this out. I need to be the one. I'm tired of getting jacked up, especially what we consider for no reason and by authority. So you took that attitude out there. I'm going to move along. Oh no, I lost my place. I'm going to move along. So you know what? I had some highlight moments, at Webster. I remember being in a biology class, and what was it like to be raised? I'm sitting in class next to somebody, and he looked at the teacher and he says, I don't know why you have me sitting next to this N. I used to always do that. Did you just really do that? Boom! Busted him right in his chops, right in class. Right in his white. He wore white shirts. He was one of the upper duties. Blood coming out, good blood all over his shirt. We're all giggling, and the teacher said, "That's enough." And he didn't send me to Mr. Thompson. He actually let it play out. And he told this young man, you shouldn't have said that. You wouldn't have got hit. And I was like, because anytime anything happened, I was the one. Once I was out of school, and might I say, before I was kicked out of school, I was able to find things like wrestling. I enjoyed wrestling. So I was able to wrestle on the team. It gave me some camaraderie. Even the people that didn't like me cheered for me, because you know how wrestling was. You had your individual score, but you had a team score. And the purpose of us as a team was to win the team match. A lot of people won single matches. We wanted to win the team match. So it brought me to a place where I could stand with a few of the people and stand up, because it meant that I was part of the team. Well, that lasted for a year or two. I was so happy. I think I lettered my first year and was in the process of just being a few points away from lettering the next year. And then I got kicked out of school. And I never went back. You know what I did? I worked around here for a while. I actually worked for the city for a while. But I went to the cities. Now I'm going to switch from being what it was like being raised here, and I'm going to come back to it in a minute. But I'm going to switch from that to what we all helped produce, Phillip Jackson. So I thought everything was going to be different. I was 18 when I went to California. I went to the hippie dippies. I was a hippie dippy. I enjoyed it. When I was out there at Haight-Ashbury, I was there. It was still smoldering when I got there. It was like, whoa, you could still smell the charcoal. I was right there. But you know what? That didn't last. I think I stayed there 3 to 4 months and I came back home. I got involved with a number of people. I wanted to go and be amongst the brothers. I mean, I'm brother deprived up here except for my brother William. I wanted to go and be amongst the brothers because the brothers, there's going to be some unity there and there's going to be black power. First person that told me they were going to kill me was a brother. I had done some stuff. I got a year sentence. I was serving my year, Hennepin County Workhouse. And on those days, you had 3 minutes on the phone. If you took over 3 minutes, the goon squad came out. Not the squad from the institution, the squad from the inmates. And they would try to enforce what they thought was your 2 minute and 45-second warning to get off the phone, you know. In any case, one of them told me they were going to cut my throat. And I just looked at them again. And I didn't hit them because in those days there had been caught another case and anything. I just looked at them and I said, you know, it ain't supposed to be like this. And he said, if you don't get off that phone, I'm going to cut your throat. So I did what I did and I got off the phone. And I went my way. And he didn't follow me. You know, I don't know if he got a Dear John letter or whatever, but nothing developed. But I was very amazed. I found out right away that the color of my skin, even though it provoked people, it would never save me. I learned that being black, a black man, was not something that was going to make my life better. Being around black people, I was just beside myself. I mean, because if you can't go amongst black people and be black and get accepted for being black, you know, you go around black people, you may not know this. Yes, I'm sure you do. But you cannot be black enough for some black people. You cannot be light enough for some black people. We used to I'm trying to figure out how to word this. They used to have names for the blacks that were mixed with whites, and they would say they were yellow ins. Oh, that's just a yellow in. Oh yeah, because they weren't black and they weren't white. And even when I went to Bible school, got saved, went to Bible school, I'm like, gave my heart to God. I'm like, wow. African kid walks up to me who was imported. They call it scholarships. Oh, did I just say that? Maybe I need to pray about the attitude that I still have. Well, I'm playing. But so make this keep moving along. He looked at me and he said, well, "What's it like?" And God told me inside me, everything said, "This isn't good." He said, "What's it like? You're not black like me." And he was black. He was a black man. You know, from Africa, he was very dark. He said, "You're not black like me." And then he pointed to one of the Caucasian students. He says, "And you're not white like him." He said, "What's it like to be a man without a country?" I said, "It's like being a man without consciousness." And I went after him. People were grabbing us. You're in a Bible school. You can't do that. I said, "You hear what he said? You hear what he said?" You see, in those days, I didn't have God tighten me up right away like he does now. I take a lot of little verbal stuff. People, oh, you know, I'm going to come back to living while being black, okay? But in those days, I didn't take a lot. And when he said that, even though I'm in a Bible school, my natural man said, tighten him up. He needs an education. So I figured God wanted me to give him an education. So, but I want to take you back to one thing before I was kicked out of high school. No. I went to college. I came back. For some reason, do you remember Miss Harley? Okay, you remember Miss Harley? For some reason, I came to Miss Harley and I said, "Miss Harley, I said, I'm sorry. I know that I was a bad kid. Oops. I know that I'm a bad student. I was. And I tell you what, the phone's bad, but I don't know how to turn off my watch. It rings sometimes. But anyways, I went to Miss Harley and I said, Miss Harley, I'm sorry, for what I was like. Because one time I got in a fight and they brought me and this other student into the office and we proceeded to pick up where we left off. And Miss Harley's like, screaming at us. And, she was a lady that she had a little oomph to her. And she was telling us what to do. And so we settled down and we just stared at each other. But I went to Miss Harley after I got back from Bible school. And I said, Miss Harley, I'm sorry. I said, would you just write a letter and tell me, because you were looking for testimonies and stuff like that. You want to write a letter and explain me as a student. So this is what Miss Harley wrote. Matter of fact, you want to read this? You guys knew Miss Harley, but so you have to speak up real loud. Check her out.
Okay, 1981.
1981.
To whom it may concern. I am the secretary at Webster High School, Webster, Wisconsin, and I was asked by Phillip Jackson to write this letter. Phillip Jackson went to high school here and graduated in 1970, but was expelled from school and not allowed to graduate.
Yes.
I can truthfully say that in my 14 years of work at Webster High School, Phillip was the worst, or at least one of the worst, students that we've ever had.
I know. Matter of fact, I was like, you don't have to be that real.
He was the most obnoxious and belligerent person that ever walked the halls of Webster High School. At one time, he had a thing going where he would beat up some of the students if they didn't pay him some money. It is a pleasure to see Phillip the way he is now, and goes to show the difference in a person's life when they have room for Christ. This is Darlene Harley, secretary.
Yeah, she kept it real.
Wow.
She kept it real. And I did. I thought, when I read it, I went, wow. Well, that's what she said, and it was good. So, okay, so it's 2:00. We've been almost an hour. Let me wrap this up. Let me totally wrap it up, and that means I'm going to put my notes away. And I know there's more I want to draw from, but I don't, on the other hand. So, after I got saved, and the reason I mention that is, remember, people curve you. People can have input into your life. And if you don't know who you are, or if you don't understand certain things, you pick up on what they are. Because they used to dictate to me. They used to say, you are this and you are that. And so finally, you know what? That's who they got. That's what I became. I remember people coming to me and challenging me. I could mention names, I've had a bad day, Phillip. I'm going to kick your black butt after school. Don't you know you're the third one this week? When was the last time you were in a fight? What? Well, let's do this. But my point is that I was constantly being challenged, and sometimes other people were just, once a year they get into a fight. Good Lord, I'd been so happy to get into a fight just once a month or once a year. But let me tell you, as I come back to how they shaped me and molded me. I got saved. I plateaued out. I became a man with a family. I got a job at the penitentiary where I almost went. When I went to become the chaplain, I became a chaplain when I came back from the Bible school. 1981, I went to 2 different places. I worked as a volunteer at Stillwater Prison as a resource chaplain, and then I took a job at Hennepin County Workhouse. And it was really kind of funny because when I went back to Hennepin County Workhouse as a chaplain, there were guys there, older guys there, and they would be like, you look familiar. And I said, really? So I wouldn't tell them. Yeah. They said, yeah, you look familiar. Oh, I just got one of those all-American faces, and I'd play with it. I might have told one guard, but I didn't. You don't want people to know. Yeah, I had a job to do. So I did my job. I worked at both places for many years, and I took a job at Stillwater as what's called a CMS. And this is the only thing that I only brought a couple of things that were from my life, but they were. I'm just gonna. It'd be good if you didn't open that because there is a shape in there that might have DNA on it, and anyway. Yeah. So. I lived a life. I'm very thankful to know God, first of all, out of this. And I'm very thankful also, to have gone through some of the struggles that I went through. When those people thought that they were carving something out and in me, they were, but they didn't know that God was going to use that person to do what he's doing now. So, long story short, I am now, as you know, we started a church. But I want to give you a little example of things. I handle things different now than I did back in those days prior to Jesus Christ. Somebody, and one of my kids, he said to me, Dad, things aren't the way they used to be when you were a kid. I said, yes, they are. They're still the same. He said, no. Because, there was 4 or 5 of them getting together, and, they flipped the N word out. And finally, I walked in the room, and I said, I'm going to tell you something. I've lost teeth, had broken nose, had this and that, eyeballs blackened. I said, because of this. And you guys think it's funny. Oh, Dad, it's different. No, it ain't no different. Let me tell you, I'm gonna give you a couple of real quick examples of how it's just the same. And the only reason I'm telling you about this, it being the same, is that you can help people because now where it used to be this little young black kid, now it's anybody in different color. I mean, we didn't have Asian kids up here. I had a young Asian man, him and I were standing in line for something, and he turned around to me and he said, well, I guess it's the people of color that don't get any help. And I looked at him and I thought, oh, wow, you got to go through that too. So, we can all affect people differently. We can be a part of someone's life. So they said, Dad, this is not, Dad, it's not like that. But they weren't with us. I'm in Cub Food. I go to Cub Food. And here, Kevin, I go to Cub Food. Should have seen me when I took that when I got that one from the guy. That was a little nerve-wracking. But I went to Cub Food, and I'm going over to the meat department because Philip's thinking about a steak. And, I'm still working at the prison at this time. I'm still paranoid. I used to tell all my friends, yeah, I'm paranoid, and I could see, I'm looking at the steaks and I could see something. And you see, like if I'd have been in my element, in my surroundings in those days, that would have been picked up right away because that person is coming right at me. So I'm pretending now I'm looking at the steak and I got that one-eyed bandit guy that I was talking about. One eye on the steak, one eye over here going, who are you? But also, he's getting closer and closer and closer. He's gotten too close. He is coming to me. So I did my thing. Oh, it's one of my buddies. He works loss and prevention. I've even helped him out in the parking lot a couple of times. He had to cuff up some people stealing stuff. Scott! So Debbie's filming. We do the old shake hands, and then what we do, we call the prison hug. Come on, Deb. So you would shake hands, and then you'd come, you go 1, 2. Yeah. And with him we embraced a little more because we were friends. I had gone over to his house. And here's what he said to me. He said, "Phillip, I had to come out and see you." I said, "Oh, well, I'm glad you did." He said, "My guys said, when you walked in, they said, we better watch this one." I said, "You kidding me?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "So I came out. I had to give you a hug just to let them know I'm watching this one." But they figured that they knew me just because I was black. And I would get stopped by the police in my hometown, 4 blocks away from where I'm going to my house, having them look at my driver's license. And then one of them, he looked so puzzled. He looked up at the mailbox. And then I said to him, 563. I live 4 houses right down there. I've been working at Stillwater Prison for over 12 years. I live there. "Why did you stop me?" You can go, Mr. Jackson. You see, here's the thing that I'm alluding to in my closing with this. When people say they don't see a black person or a native person or whatever, of course they do. I am always living while black. I'm glad that I'm going to say something that's just like 4 or 5 of us from the church. So I went to see somebody in Siren who had a problem. I stopped in there. This is about 6 weeks ago. I stopped in there to see her. She was the bartender. I walked in. I said, "Is so-and-so here?" "No, she doesn't get off. She doesn't come on until a certain time." And then, of course, I'm talking to this young man, and I'm even slightly turned talking to him, and I see this coming at me. So, that Phillip kicks in and looks at this guy, and he leans into me, and he says, "How do you know when you're dirty?"
Oh.
Now, if you would have had that other Phillip, the one that isn't moved and inspired by God and the Holy Ghost, he would have found out how I knew I wasn't dirty or when I was dirty. Because his blood, I'm telling you, you know what we, really? And then we had some dialogue, and he's like, "Well, I don't want to get in a fight. I don't want to get in a fight." I'm like, you got to want to have gotten in a fight. And what stopped us was I was just frustrated. Plus, they gave me a Valium, because I was coming back from the doctor because I had ablation. So I'm a little, but I'm thinking, oh no. And we're eyeballing each other, and he's like, "I don't want to get in a fight." And I said, I was in a good mood when I came in here. And the people across the bar, they said, "I'm in a good mood. There's a guy and a gal. I'm in a good mood. I'm in a good mood too. And they said it so much that they took my focus off this guy. And I looked over at him and smiled, and then the tension broke. And, then he was not even in the picture anymore. And we smiled at each other, and when I walked by him, I said, "You should know that if you said that to the wrong black man, he'd kill you." Just that's all. Mm-hmm. Just like that. So that was like on a Friday. And I'm going to tell you something, and this is what I decided to stay in the room. The individuals are not here. But I was getting ready to go to church about 4 weeks ago. I was in church. I have a routine. Our church members can tell you, I have a routine. I go back to after music practice. I go back, or anything else. We talk a little bit, and I go off because I want to try and settle my soul so I can hear from the Lord about what I need to do or how I need to do it. And as I was coming back into the room, and down the aisleway, a man leans over to me and he says, got you again, Dad. He goes, "You must be the pastor. You're the darkest one in the room." Now, this is before I'm getting ready to go into the pulpit. I'm sorry. My children said that, "Oh, this is a dad. It ain't." It is. And you know why it is? Because it's spiritual. And if they couldn't find me, they'd pick on each other. The Polish and the Irish, isn't it? Zulu, Swahili, the last of the Mohegans. It wasn't the Caucasian tribe that killed them. Wasn't it the Native American tribe that did the last of the Mohegans in? But I mean, the enemy has a way of making people kill each other over the color of skin. I'm in a church, I'm leading worship, not our church here, I'm in another church. And I'm getting ready to close the doors with another worship leader. And this is when Martin Luther King Sunday Martin Luther King had turned into a holiday. And he says, as we're closing the doors to go in, and I'm going to welcome people, pray with them, and he's going to lead the worship. So we each have a job to do for the senior pastor. And he looks at me and he says, they made this Martin Luther King thing holiday. And I said, "Yeah, I know." He said, "Maybe we could kill another one." On our way to the pulpit. And I half-stepped him. That's what I call, it's like when you're walking with somebody and we were getting ready to have to go into some kind of combat or some kind of problem, you half-stepped so that you were a step back and you took a 45-degree angle. And the other officer would probably do the same thing or whatever, so that you weren't just face-to-face with him. You half-stepped. And I half-stepped him, but not to be violent, but just to step back. And this guy was just fine with what he said. And he got up there and he got to singing about Jesus. And I'm thinking, God, I will live while black until the day I die. I can go into Wayne's, I can go in anywhere, I can do anything. People are eyeballing me because I'm black. They want to make sure I'm not going to steal something. And they think that every black man is after their wife. Oh my goodness. That's another whole story, another time. So in any case, I will conclude with that. It's been long enough. It's not a woes with me. I'm 74. I didn't live through it, And the little things that happen now, you must be the pastor. You're the darkest one. That ain't nothing. I don't know if you heard that day. I remember looking at you and saying, I tried to say, "Did you hear that?" Because I wanted some verification. Sometimes things are so stupid that you think, no, that's that guy didn't mean it like that. But the man in me, I'm like I said, I've said before, I knew he meant it like that. Encourage people, though. If you have that influence where you can speak to somebody of color, they're always going to be that person. I'm always going to be a black man. But the only thing about that now, a lot of people put the blackness on the sleeve. I'm Phillip Jackson. I'm a Christian. I happen to be black. But I'm Phillip Jackson. That's my name. I'm a Christian. And the blackness is just the vessel, the tint that God has given me. Any questions or anything that you might have? Yes.
What would you say to young people when they're witnessing racism today? If they see something like you were mentioning, those little moments where something is said that's not right, should people respond?
it's very hard for people to respond. I think they should. I mean, I want to hope that I will respond properly. If I see my brothers and sisters under certain guns, accusations, being attacked, I would step up for them. Absolutely. In our society nowadays, it's a risky thing because you can be sued. It can escalate. But if it's a small enough infraction, God, how does it be small enough? But if it's not something that's blood, it's not something that people are spitting out stuff. People need a correction. Absolutely. I sometimes I want to do that at certain times because I got a thing for older people. I mean, they got to be older to be older than me. But I mean, I got a thing for older people, and I don't think they should be disrespected. So I hear some of my older brothers and sisters, and now some of our older guys in church, and they get disrespected in my world. Because I was raised to respect people, even if they don't like you. So sometimes I want to say something to those people. Yes, Kathy.
What would be your perfect scenario, like in a school where there's a group of people who care about you or your friends, and they witness somebody saying something inappropriate to you? Would you prefer that they all sort of band around you and ostracize that person, or would you prefer that they address that person and give them talking down to?
Yeah.
Which would you prefer?
I would like to see it combined. And what I mean by that is, I've lived long enough that sometimes people are just plain ignorant. Some people are plain stupid. They've never been taught to respect people. I think that people have to learn how to respect people. And I think people have to learn how to defend people. You know what, like I said with that, Phillip, he's our man. If he can't do it, just to be included and be respected that day, I still remember that from the 10th grade. The cheerleaders. So I think that people, when you encounter a situation like that, you don't have to be ugly to that individual, but you can let that individual know that, your snide or your smart little comment that you just made, that's not healthy for any of us. And if you can make a man or a woman, feel less like a victim, you have won a brother or a sister. I'm telling you. Remember that song, "We are one in the Spirit"? We're going to do it this week. We are one in the Lord. And one of the lines says, we should save each man's dignity or save each man's pride. And I think we should do that. I'd rather err on the side of protecting and helping someone than err on the side of letting someone leave that room feeling like a piece of crap. So a little bit of each. Okay? Yes.
I didn't hear what that guy said, but I heard you tell me that he said that.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what to do.
Oh.
I didn't know.
Yeah. No, it's a hard situation. Can I, maybe I'll tell you this privately. No, because I'd have to mention names and stuff like that, and this, I don't know where this is going, and I'm not out to slander anybody, even though they were bad and wrong. I don't want to do that to them. Yes.
When the Black Lives Matter movement got started,
Mm-hmm.
not started, but really came to fruition,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously there's a whole lot of different opinions and thoughts going on
Mm-hmm.
social media. And, there was the thing that spoke to me was how nice that you don't have to worry about that. Like, as a white person.
Mm,
Like how
mhm.
nice that you don't even have to consider that being an issue.
For
Like,
you.
What a privilege. Exactly.
Yeah.
So like, what a privilege.
Hmm.
Aren't you lucky? So I've been in situations where people will categorize a group of people. African Americans, Asians, Hmong, pick one. But do you feel like the response is subtle but strong enough to say, well, how nice that you don't have to understand that? Or how nice is it that you don't have to worry about that?
Hmm.
Is that a strong enough statement to get someone to stop and
Think.
think
Well, you know,
without being too antagonistic? Because obviously I would rather be antagonistic, but I'm trying not to.
Mhm.
But like, just like a quick jab to shut someone up,
Yeah.
you know, to be like, hey, must be nice to not have to worry about whether or not you're not being helped because of the color of your skin, or
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, that's I'm not copping out on you, but that's the kind of situation, you know, you got to be there in the moment, you got to know what's said. You know, one of the worst things that we have is texting, because when people are texting, you can't hear their voice, you can't feel what they're saying.
Mhm.
You know, what do they say that 90% or 80%? I've been out of statistics for a while. At 74, I ain't been in that school. But isn't 80 to 90% of our communication non-verbal? Verbal? We read bodies, we read eyes, and so when we're texting things like that, we don't get that. But you know what? It just depends on that situation. You know, and you know, I didn't do well with Black Lives Matter. I didn't. I mean, I got it from. It was like being in the prison. In the prison, the black men tried to dog me out. They didn't like me because I was black and I had authority. And in the prison, the white guys didn't like me because I was black and I had authority over them. And so, you know, it was an issue. Now it's the same thing out here. People have issues with that, and I didn't do well with Black Lives Matter because it was not Black lives that mattered. They were on a whole different program. They were social. They had social agendas. They had political things. They cared less about black people being killed, except for it was to benefit their cause. Because we could list young women and people who were killed, black people that were killed, and nobody said a thing. But when this one individual gets killed, well, Al Sharpton and blah blah blah, and they're making this big scene. Why? Because it's a political scene for them. But you know, where have they been for all these years when there was number one killer of a black man, even 30 years ago? When I'm doing statistics, because I was an affirmative action officer at Stillwater. Even then, doing statistics amongst the blacks 30, 40 years ago, number one killer of a black man between the age of 18 and 30 was another black man. Nobody cared. But you let something happen on this political field, and et cetera, and they want to make a big scene out of it. So, you know, I got ostracized even from my family over Obama. Yes, ma'am.
You were the first black family in Burnett County, right?
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah.
And we have never had many families. There's, I think, a family now, but it's very rare that you do see,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a colored person in the store or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know that's what's happening too, is I have nieces and nephews. Some of you might have went to school or you know them. You know, my nieces and nephews, but I'm the last black of this generation. When I'm gone, we're all gone. And some of us have already talked about that. Barbara, Louise, William, Mom, and Dad are all gone. My oldest sister, Barbara, just died like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, she passed a couple of weeks ago. So, you know, I'm that last generation, and I really tried to pump my mom for information and information and information, you know, because I want to pass it on to my kids, but yeah.
Well, I don't know how many people in here knew his mother. She was absolutely wonderful.
Yep.
She was, and she went through things.
Oh yeah. I didn't even go there. I'd written it down in the notes, and I thought, nah, it's yeah.
Yeah, but it was hard to understand why. And because it wasn't her color,
Mm-hmm.
not because she was such a wonderful, wonderful, loving gal. You know, it was her color.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a shame.
You know, I mean, you think about it. I'm 74. Now let's go back 60 years. 14. No, we got to go back more than that. But let's take it when I'm little. I mean, people have shot at our house. Drove by our house in Danbury, outside Danbury. Mom and Dad said, "Yeah, they shot it at the house." You know, we had things like that happen to us. So, you know, when Dad had a problem, the police came. They took every gun away from us. They took every gun out of our house. They had to come back after court and all that other stuff and get his guns back because they were afraid. Black man having a gun, you know. So there were some hard times, but you know something?
There you go.
I was just it's kind of funny here. I was just telling Kevin. Kevin is a super guy. Him and his wife. He plays an instrument for the worship team, and I was telling him and another sister. I said, "Yeah, I'm ready to go home. Home. I'm ready to go home. You know, but it's got to be in God's timing. You know, but this is the end of it. I hope this is the only person that they'll ever get for you." See, where to go? Oh, up here. See any resemblance?
Wasn't Barb into ministry too?
Yes, she was. And Louise also. They,
Louise too.
yeah. You know, they love the Lord.
Yeah, I know that. And now Louise, her real name isn't Louise, right?
Edna.
It's Edna.
Edna Louise was Louise's real name. Instead of, like Mom was Edna Louise Jackson, hers was Edna Louise. And they always called her Louise because they'd have to have two Ednas.
Yeah.
Kind of like William and Dad. They called Dad Jack the Bear. And he got that name for a reason. But they called him Jack the Bear. But they called William sometimes Little William or Little Bear. You know, he's a little bear after Dad. So. Okay. Well, I hope I didn't keep you too long, and thank you for coming. And I hope something good happens with this.
Thank you.